And I think it's very important that for our most basic need, the food that keeps us alive, we should have an opportunity to be self-reliant as a community and as individuals and do business with our neighbors rather than an absentee-owned corporation for that.
Okay, I have a number of questions. One question I want to ask later is about benefits in terms of the quality of food and so on. I have a particular question about the concept of local. I mean, at the same time as I kind of get a mixed signal about this, that maybe we should reach out more to the rest of the world and not have an us-them attitude. And at the same time, there's this pull to say we should do things locally. And so how do you address that kind of paradox?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that we're looking at happening on a global scale is that we have these institutions that people are very out of touch with. We don't have this global civil society of global communities. We kind of do, it's starting. But we have organizations like the World Trade Organization, World Bank, International Monetary Fund. These are global institutions, and then global corporations that are that have larger budgets than many third world countries. And there's no democratic control. There's not a sense of participation in these institutions. And I think that's where, if you have that globalization or that greater sphere, and there's a sense of participation, well then wonderful. The thing is that we lose that participation when we have certain businesses come into Boulder that no one feels like they're a part of. There's something wrong. Then our lives start to feel controlled in a way, and also like there's a heart of things that's missing. I think that's what we're really trying to address here, to come from a heart space, to provide a heart space. Because we could certainly link up with cooperatives across the country, and that's not local, but there'd be a heart space, there'd be people behind it that love it, not people who are just trying to make money off of it.
I'm thinking of when Sawadis moved out and the Cheesecake Factory moved in on the mall. And my response to that was more aesthetic than anything else. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a particularly beautiful building, but I enjoyed going to Sawadis and the other shops there. And the Cheesecake Factory came in, and it just struck me as just kind of strip mall big city. And I was bothered by the aesthetics of it. And I do want to let us go on to other points, but I do want to say a position that I think that someone would say about the World Trade Organization and some of these organizations, that it's true that they're not directly democratic organizations, but they do have representatives from many different countries, and I think that they would argue that by increasing free trade, it opens up countries. And it increases the economic base in those countries so that democratic institutions become economically possible. I think that they would make that case. Mm-hmm. Certainly in terms of the aesthetics, I couldn't agree with you anymore. What are some other advantages to having a local co-op?
Before we get going with that, I'd just like to, I don't know if everybody knows what a food co-op is or any kind of co-op. Mm-hmm. We might want to start with a definition of what a co-op is. And basically, it's a business that's owned and operated by its members. It's not owned by someone else. It's not owned by a corporation. It's owned by us.
Is that sort of like United Airlines? I mean,
it's owned by the workers.
They say they're owned by the workers, and yet they have management worker disputes and stuff. Yeah. So what's the difference between this kind of a co-op and that, or is there a difference?
Well, United Airlines is just on such a vastly greater scale, for one thing. So you'd continue to have these problems. It's worker-owned, so that's a big difference. They're worker-owned cooperatives and consumer-owned. The people who shop in the store will own the food cooperative. If the workers owned it, it would be a sort of different scenario. And there are problems in all businesses. There are going to be problems with the food cooperative. We're not going to be the perfect utopian institution.
There's going to be problems with it? Okay, I'm out of here.
Well, to address that point, large businesses and the largest corporate chains, sure, they're going to be providing a lot of the same food products people have developed a taste for oranges from Florida and California and apples from across the continent and all kinds of other places. But the big difference is when you're operating on that scale of the chain, you're going to buy your products from other large corporations. One of the things about a locally owned business, especially a co-op, is they can choose to support local farmers right here in Boulder County, or on a slightly larger scale in Colorado, something that a larger business is unlikely to do. And so that helps create both, not just aesthetically a stronger community, but economically as well. When you have those dollars circulating in the local economy, it builds a stronger and more prosperous base. Now, when you talk about what's mistakenly called free trade, which is very much corporate managed and dictated trade, yes, you're opening up countries to trade and commercial activity, but it's one of exploitation and extraction, not one of mutual benefit to a large degree. When you have, say, a banana farmer in Ecuador who's being paid rock bottom price for that crop by the Chiquita Corporation, who then makes a tremendous profit, as opposed to on a smaller scale, co-op farmers are much more likely to find an opportunity to selling to a cooperatively owned market or an independently owned market. So there's a whole cycle there where, as Theo was referring to, building a base of civil society and decentralizing power, sharing economic prosperity, as opposed to centralizing it into the hands of a few. And I think the co-op movement plays a key role in that.
So, and I disagree with you completely on that point, but I want to go to a place where I think a co-op could make a big difference. The Horizon Dairy, and they have a lot of the organic products, and there's another one I think called Cooperative Farms. My understanding, well, I went to the Horizon Dairy. They've got a big one on the East Coast, and they've got one up north of here. I can't remember, it's Wyoming or Nebraska or somewhere. But I went up there a couple of years ago, and what allowed them to identify themselves as organic is that they gave organic feed to the cattle, which was great. Aside from that, it looked exactly the same as every other one. The what do you call the little cows that you make veal from?
Calves.
The calves. The calves were separated, put in little isolated pens by themselves. It's overcrowded. It's pretty brutal conditions for cows, and not much different than what's in another one. My understanding is that when you go with smaller, though, when you have a farm that has 5 to 50 cows, you're going to get far more humane conditions. So that strikes me as a possible advantage of going more local. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. And for one thing, your products don't have to be shipped across the country, and you save shipping costs, and the products are fresher. And like you say, you can work directly with the farmer. You can go out there and see what's happening. I've personally spoken to about 15 local growers and farmers in Boulder County and on the western slope. And they're really excited about being able to have an outlet, a daily outlet for their products. And they have things like free-range eggs and dairies like you're talking about on a smaller scale. All kinds of organic produce. Some have greenhouses where they can grow them all year long. So that's going to be an exciting part to me, is seeing all those local suppliers come together. And we want to promote that in the store too. We want to give information out about those farms and have them connect with our members, so it's people know where it's coming from, and they're all people.
Now, don't you have to, in a way, change the whole paradigm of how people buy things and how people think about what they're going to buy and what their bottom line is? And I mean, if I go to buy something right now, I think, okay, who has the most choice? Where is it the cheapest? And if you're a business, you're thinking, how can I make the most money with the least output? And this seems like it's a whole different paradigm. And how do you convince people to buy into that new paradigm?
I don't think in Boulder that we're going to have to convince too many people to buy into that new paradigm. I think it is a whole new paradigm. It's something most of America is not used to. But in Boulder, at least 5% of our population are ethical consumers. They are wanting to buy products that they feel some sense of connection to, that they feel like, I either knew the person who sold this to me, I know the people who work in the store, I've known them for a while, or perhaps I've heard a lot about this business, whatever the locally owned company might be that's selling their.
Yeah, well, like Eric was talking about, you have to value humane treatment of animals way more than how much you're paying for something.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things with a cooperative or an independently owned business, but I think a cooperative even more so than with individually owned, is what we're looking at as a human scale. And what is a human scale? And we're talking about global civil society. How many people can be a part of a community? Like, what number does it get to where those people can no longer relate with one another as individuals? Is it 10 people can only relate as individuals, 100, 1,000? And then at what number does humane treatment end? Do ethics stop? Do people just not even understand what's happening with the people that are a part of this so-called community? And with the co-op, we're reducing that scale, and we're giving everybody a greater stake.
Yeah, and it's, I don't have a huge income, but I would so much rather spend more on a product and support us community than a large corporation. The only power we have politically directly is where we place our money, where we spend our money. And it's easy to get into the thought patterns of, well, I'm only one person and I'm only buying a gallon of milk at King Soopers or at Wild Oats, and so I don't make much of a difference. But you know what? Every grain of sand adds to a beach, and it's got to start somewhere. And as it builds, it gets big.
Yeah,
so
life's a beach.
Life's a beach, so you might as well dive.
I wanted to add something to that. I don't want it to sound like our products are going to be much more expensive than other stores. They're actually not. We're going to be,
really?
we're going to be pretty competitive. There may be some things that are higher, for certain situations, but for the most part, we will be competitive, and we'll be giving discounts to members also, when they join up. But we're going to be able to combine our purchasing power, for one thing, with several other co-ops in Colorado and New Mexico, and be able to get greater volume discounts. So that's one thing. And also, by buying direct from the supplier, you don't pay all the middle people in between. Mm-hmm. And even though the grower will get more for their products, we won't be paying necessarily more to have it in the co-op.
And I wanted to add something to what you were saying about distribution and shipping. I used to work in a store in Rochester, New York, and Brown Cow Dairy was just down the road. And we bought from a distributor out in the Midwest somewhere. So the yogurt was shipped from Brown Cow out west and then back to us before we put it on our shelves. And it never quite made sense, but that's how that system works.
I think it's important to address, part of what you raised also about there being a paradigm shift, and to some degree that's true, but largely what's needed is really more awareness of reality. And unfortunately, we have such vast power in the hands of corporations like Walmart, for example. Hit people over the head with a message, always the low price, and they'll believe it's true. But once the competition is gone, that's not true. And there's been many studies that bear this out. Where there's competition, yes, they're much more competitive. Where there's not, the prices go through the roof. And you look at Barnes & Noble Corporation, for example, when they came to Boulder, everything in the store was discounted. Now you have to pay, I believe it's $35 a year to get any discount at all in their store. Meanwhile, you have much better deals offered by locally owned and operated bookstores like Word Is Out, Acoma, Boulder Bookstore. They're actually selling books less expensively than Barnes & Noble is for the average book buyer now. So part of it, it requires more consciousness on the part of people as to the impact of where they're putting their dollars, taking responsibility for their actions and for their own community and for the values they want to see there. But also it takes work on our part, on all of us here, to really break through that, a lot of the propaganda to give people a clearer picture of what they're getting for their money and what the impacts of their spending are.
And you know, it's true, if I only care about myself and not connected with any sense of community or world or ecological issues, then I'm going to go buy the cheapest thing. But if I care at all about anything besides me, I'm going to look at where I'm putting my dollars and who I'm supporting.
There you've got a big problem, I think. With
How so?
did you want to say
Well,
something?
I was just going to ask, specific for that, is do North Burlington Market and Wild Oats and Whole Foods, do they buy from local growers or no?
Well,
And to what extent?
I mean, to some extent they do, but it's really interesting. In Whole Foods, you can walk in and we'll have these giant posters along the produce wall of local growers. And I once counted, I can't remember how many, because these posters fill up the whole wall space. And I once counted what percent was locally grown, and locally meant Colorado, New Mexico, any of this Central Rocky area. And I think it was around 7% that I counted. I think Wild Oats, I've noticed that they tend to have a little bit more. We're hoping with our produce that we could do, 50 to 100%. I'm not sure what numbers.
Yeah, and when Crystal Market was young and idealistic, a large percentage of our produce was locally grown. And back then, you could buy anything in the store and not have to read the ingredients because it was good for you. And at the end, hardly anything was bought locally, and most of the stuff on the shelf was just there because it would sell. So
It's important to remember too, if you have a good, strong local network, if you're not having to recreate the wheel, like, our first year we're going to have to get together a network of farmers, but things can be a lot cheaper. I was just working up in a co-op in Ann Arbor, and the people who wanted cheap food would always buy the local stuff because the local stuff was 50%, sometimes a third of what the other produce was. So oftentimes there is a strong congruence between our idealism and living in being poor. Being poor can work. Being poor and idealistic does work. Look at Gandhi.
and he was a member of a co-op.
Oh, he promoted co-ops all over the place. He was one of the biggest promoters of cooperatives that there's ever been. So he's on our side.
Is the farmers market on your side? Do they think this is great, or is this competition to them? It's going to shut them down? How is that?
I think they're on our side. Last summer, they gave us a free booth at the market every Saturday to help get members for the co-op. And I've talked to several of the growers that sell at the farmers market, and they're excited about supplying the co-op. And right now, they don't supply any other natural food store, the ones that we've spoken to.
Does co-op mean organic or not? And does locally grown mean organic, or do you just have...
Co-op itself doesn't mean organic.
Or your co-op, I mean.
But our members, a high percentage of our members want a high percentage of organics in the store. The three things that they cited in our survey we did recently was organic food, locally grown produce, and a lot of bulk foods. Because bulk foods, you can buy the amount you want, and it's a lot less price. You save on the packaging, so it's more environmentally responsible. So those are the three areas that we'll probably focus on. And we'll have other packaged goods and a wide variety of items, but those are the areas.
Well, I'm getting really excited about it. One thing comes up for me that I think you haven't mentioned, but I think I know about co-ops, is that you have to actually work at the co-op. Like you have to spend some time working at the co-op.
Well, you don't have to. We have an option where you can be a working member, and you'll get a greater discount than a regular member. And the way it's set up now is if you're a member, you get 5% off on all your purchases. If you're a working member, we're still debating that, but it'll be 10 to 15%, and maybe you'll work 6 to 10 hours a month. But that's definitely not mandatory to be a working member.
And then you can just come in and shop at the store as well. There's no need to even become a member. the advantage of becoming a member is the discount, other member benefits that we'll give throughout anything we can come up with, basically, to sort of take care of our members and draw them into having a sense of community. And I think a lot of people want to support the store, and there is a vote for the board of directors. One member, one vote, which means you don't only feel a sense of ownership, you are an owner. That's the difference between a co-op and other businesses that kind of invite you in.
Yeah, traditionally, there hasn't been a co-op in Boulder in how many years?
20.
Wow.
That's what I've heard.
20 years, and that's a curiosity to me. Maybe we could talk a little bit about why we think that is.
Because corporate health food stores are better. Isn't that why we're here? I have some theories on it. Why can't Boulder get together? Why haven't we been able to get together a strong cooperative movement here? One is the transiency. This is an incredibly transient town, and cooperatives are stable, community-oriented organizations that oftentimes take time to grow. Another thing is that a lot of these health food stores that are now corporations, well, they started out as small, locally owned businesses that had a really different feel than they have right now. And the third thing I can't think up yet. Can anybody else?
I can.
But 3 sounds good.
I got it. It's a tremendous amount of work,
Yeah.
for one thing. And pay is terrible to get it started.
And it does require
and
commitment.
it requires a commitment by a solid core group of people, which I think we have now. And I'm not sure if they've had that in the past or not, but I know that's an essential element.
And in the past, from my understanding, there was a good deal of corporate pressure from the big guys towards the distributors around co-ops. That's just rumor, mind you. But they do have a lot of buying power, and if they're contributing a large percentage to a distributor, the distributor's probably going to listen to what they have to say. So, and the issue about commitment in Boulder here, I've lived in a lot of places, and I find that commitment is more of a challenge here in Boulder than I found anywhere else from people. So that's the biggest issue I come across when trying to give birth to this concept. You know, people say, yeah, let's have a co-op. And we say, okay, what do you want to do? And they say, I want to say, let's have a co-op.
I want to go there and shop.
So, and it takes more than saying good idea. It takes people to give their money in terms of membership. It takes people to give their energy and caring in terms of actually creating together.
So let's focus a little bit on this one. Does it have a name? When is it going to open? What are the possible locations you're looking at?
Well, the name we're using right now is Boulder Co-op Market. And we don't have a location currently, but we have been looking for several months, trying to find a place that kind of meets a balance, being centrally located, but also at a rental price that we can afford and still sell food at a reasonable price. And there are a couple of locations that we're negotiating on at this point, but I won't say where it is until it becomes final. What was the other part of your question?
When?
Oh, when? That's what everybody wants to know. I'd like to know myself. But when depends on when we've raised a bit more capital. When we've raised over $50,000 now, primarily through memberships, but we knew we would need to take on some loans and do some fundraising. We're in the middle of a couple of fundraising projects right now. I'll mention what they are. One is Co-op Day on April 28th. Several of the locally owned businesses are pledging to give 10% of their sales on April 28th for the co-op, and we'll encourage our members and others to support those businesses. Secondly, we're starting a booklet that lists natural healthcare practitioners and educational opportunities. And all those people that sign up in the book would give discounts to co-op members. So we're kind of using our group purchasing power there. And also we'll encourage co-op members to support those organizations because they put some money into this in order to help the co-op. So basically it depends on the funds right now. We're ready with everything else. And we have a lot of good possibilities out there. I think personally I think we could get the funds together within a couple of months and then rent a site and be open at least by late summer. We hope to catch the produce season this year.
And the sun.
Sun.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I have a request as a bus rider that it's on the skip, hop, jump, or leap routes. And I think for people who try to be consistent, I mean, if I have a choice of taking a bus to Wild Oats or borrowing a car to drive to a co-op, that puts me in a bind that I'd rather not be in.
So you think Michigan is too far for the
Well, I wanted to say on that topic, and I might be in a better position here as being someone who's been basically observing the hard work of these folks here and many others, to kind of toot their horn and say to folks out there, what's needed first and foremost is for the people who want to see this happen to open up their wallets. It's not going to happen without that. If you believe in the idea of local ownership, local control, democratic control over food supply, or if you just like the idea of being able to go into a place that has that kind of hometown atmosphere to it, please dig in and support the cause directly. And one way in which we're trying with the Boulder Independent Business Alliance to help out is we just launched a new program that's in part of our new guide here called the Community Benefit Card, where unlike many of the larger big box stores, a membership in this costs just $15 to give you discounts at over 60 independently owned local businesses in the area. Something that was just launched 2 months ago is off to a great start. And as part of that, we're using it as a fundraiser for local nonprofits, including the Boulder Food Co-op. So anyone who wants to pick up a community card and start saving themselves some money, if they just mention the Boulder Food Co-op when they send in that card order, $5 out of the $15 card cost will go right to the Boulder Food Co-op. So,
And who do they have to mention?
just mention the food co-op on the slip when they send it in to us, or when they buy it at the farmer's market. It'll be on sale there and many other places.
So if they just mention the co-op, you'll give the co-op money.
Okay, Steve.
That is correct.
So what kind of, I mean, are you going to have mostly produce or produce and dry goods?
Yeah, we'll have a wide selection. We'll have, like I said, a lot of bulk products, produce, packaged grocery, cereals, jams, jellies, olives, whatever. And dairy products. We'll have herbal supplements, a big section of bulk herbs, so you can get herbal healing products at a low price. Bakery items, and hopefully if we get a large enough space, we'll have a little cafe too, where people can come and have lunch and dinner and support the co-op in that way, and have a community gathering space, which will probably combine with the cafe area. It's a great way for like-minded people to get together. I mean, we've had one big gathering, and just seeing 150 people together of like mind that really want this kind of thing to happen was totally exciting to me. I mean, that kind of propelled the thing forward to see what can happen.
I think in general, one way to look at what are we going to have at the co-op, we're going to have what most health food stores have, but within that context, we'll be a little bit healthier. The products we buy we'll be trying to buy products that are produced in a more socially and environmentally responsible manner. We'll be trying to buy more locally grown foods. And whenever possible, we'll be trying to find more inexpensive products to begin with. Whether we can start taking the prices down a notch or two from other businesses that will sell them, we'll see. Hopefully we're going to be able to do that. But when it's a choice between a luxury brand, salsa, and the El Cheapo, we'll get the El Cheapo healthy stuff that was grown on a cooperative farm somewhere.
So for an idea of size, is this going to be about the size of North Boulder Market, or? ideal? I mean, are you going to be like as massive as Whole Foods? What kind of a scale is one to envision
yeah,
this?
we've been mostly looking at spaces from 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. And if you know the size of the Vitamin Cottage, it's a little smaller than that. So it won't be as...
No. Give me an idea. I don't know the Vitamin
It was
Cottage.
about the size of Crystal Market.
Yeah.
Okay, that's clear.
Okay, got that.
Wow. So, well, I have some more points.
His brain is twirling. Go ahead.
I want to make sure in the amount of time we've got left to spend a lot of time with specifics around this and things that we can do to help. And there's one thing about independent versus corporate business that I just can't seem to drop. So I want to throw something out for your all's consideration here. And it has to do with bookstores. So if I want a certain kind of book, I go to Acoma Books. If I want something else, I go to the Boulder Bookstore. So recently I was looking for a particular book, and I went to Borders. And I have a number of friends, who just, they're still friends with me, but it certainly put a strain on the relationship. And part of the dilemma that I was caught in there is I go to local stores first. And I have a clear preference for that. I feel more familiar, I know the people there, and that's tremendous. And the reason that I got this particular book at Borders was that part of what bookstores provide is an atmosphere where you can go in and you can browse and you can look at books. So if I want to, if I'm looking for fairly serious text and textbooks and more in-depth writing and things, I'm probably going to go to Acoma. It's the meatiest one that I've been to in town. If I'm looking for a general good selection, I'm going to the Boulder Bookstore and so on. So I was simply looking for a copy of the collected works of T.S. Eliot, right? Just no big deal, right? So I couldn't find it in a used bookstore. I couldn't find it at the Boulder Bookstore. And then what I was told was, well, we can order it for you. And, well, I know it can be ordered. I can order online. I can buy it from somebody locally. But part of the service is to create an atmosphere of selection. And one advantage of the large stores is they can afford to stock it. The classical music selection at Borders is the best in town, which is not such a compliment to Borders as what a dearth of selection we have in the rest of town. You got to go to Cherry Creek to get a really good classical music selection. So the point I'm saying is that I think there's a place. I'll go local first, and I do appreciate things that the chains can afford to bring in. So, I mean, what are your all's feelings on that?
I think you should take this one.
Well, part of what you say, absolutely agree with. Boulder does have a dearth of classical music, for example, and I can't blame anyone for choosing to do their purchasing there. We have Albums on the Hill and Bart's that have outstanding collections in many other genres, but in that case, certainly can't fault anyone for that. In terms of the overall book selection, while they may differ from one to another, in many cases you're going to find at least the equal overall selection. They may not have had what you were looking for on that occasion, and certainly there's no fault to be laid for doing that. Overall, I think the overall diversity of what we have choices in as far as music and books, literature and movies is really largely dependent on maintaining this plethora nationally, though, of small independent operators that collectively create a much broader selection than a single chain store may. Even though a single Borders, for example, may have 100,000 titles of books, whereas the local independent store in some towns may have 50,000, every one of those independent stores around the country is carrying significantly different stock. So overall, you create a far greater diversity, and we all lose in the long term. Not that there is an evil aspect to having Borders there, but if these chains continue to drive out the locals, then in the long run, all of our choices are seriously diminished, and that's the real concern here.
Yeah, I've actually heard about this because my son is in the publishing industry in New York, and he works for a small publisher. And he's saying that almost the entire publishing industry is now owned by one publisher. And so they totally decide what gets published and what doesn't get published. And the way they decide is what's going to sell a lot. And so there are a lot of things that we used to be able to get new things that we used to be able to read, alternative things, controversial things that drop out.
Yeah, and one of it's great that we would go from health food to books, because I think there's a great congruence here. Just as there are a lot of people that are into health food, that are into selling health food or growing health food, I guess just growing food, or organic food, because they love it, because they want to provide a service. There are a lot of people who are into writing books, into publishing books, and into selling books because they want to provide a service. Now, what happens when those people are run out of business and the people that are selling these products, whether it's food or books, are now the people who want to make money? Well, quality goes downhill almost immediately. When you can make it look healthy, well, we'll sell that. It looks healthy on the surface, we'll call it all natural, even though it's filled with chemicals. When on the surface the title is going to look like it's intellectually intriguing and it's really garbage, but it's flashy, we're going to sell that, and we're going to publish that. And I think this is a lot of the problem we're running into with the corporatization of our society.
I want to throw out just one more point on that too. When you look at the video business, Blockbuster and a few other chains dominate the market locally. The video station right here in Boulder, the major independent, has a greater overall selection than every Blockbuster in the world combined. Double
Wow.
that.
Wow.
More or
Wow.
less.
Wow. Wow.
And there you have it.
If we lost this single store, there's a very good chance that there would be nowhere else, not only in this area, but in the country, to find many of the titles that the video station carries. And that's the kind of uniqueness, and by filling certain niches that the chains just won't go into, because they depend on the Blockbusters for making their profit. They will, ultimately succeed in eliminating our choices, not because they're evil entities, but because entities like, the video bus or the video station, they can't survive just on people going there when they want the offbeat title.
Right.
If they do 80% of their movie rentals at Blockbuster because 80% of their movies are big sellers, that's going to mean the end of the independent. So people really need to be conscious about not only what the immediate value is, which in many cases I feel is better in doing business with the locals, but also the long term, the bigger picture of what the impacts of our day-to-day decisions are.
This brings up something for me when you talk about video station, because philosophically I really like video station. And in terms of being able to go into it and find something, if I don't already know what I want, is horrible. I mean, compared to Blockbuster, it's somehow, and I don't know if this is going to happen with this co-op too, you need to learn about marketing. I mean, I'm terrible at marketing myself, but you need to learn about how to make it so a person could go in there and find something easily, because that's the kind of culture we're in.
Well, one of the things that's interesting with some of these large corporations, I've found that often too, especially when you go to a strange town and there you are walking into Blockbusters and you know exactly where each section is going to be. But we've got to look at what is that doing to us as individuals. We are being kind of led by the nose to whatever bestseller it is they want us to buy, whatever the new releases are. And culturally we lose, personally we lose. We don't take as many chances. I think that we lose in terms of artistic diversity that we get to participate in.
Well, I can see that, and I agree with that, and I think you lose out, though, if you don't have some way of making people feel like it's going to be easy for them. That's just the way it is.
The Boulder bookstore does that well.
It does. Yeah.
It's one of the things is how much personal care is put into every square foot of a store. It's either you got to have personal care put into it, or you've got to have a good marketed plan that's replicated all over the country maybe. And one of the neat things about a co-op is there's so many people that care about it. There's so many people putting energy into it. That any place you go in the store, you can feel it. people have put that extra care into how they arrange the produce, or how they do this little meaningless display. Sometimes that's difficult to do when there's one owner of a business, I think. It's my own feeling.
I just want to say, I would never put myself in the position of trying to tell someone to do business where they're not getting a good value. In a poorly run business, there's no excuse for that, and there are plenty of local and independently owned businesses that fail very justifiably. It's not a question of telling people to go where they're going to get an inferior value. That's not going to work, and it never will. But by breaking through some of the perceptions people have that aren't always the reality, that are just born out of habit or born out of reading advertising, seeing advertising over and over, when people really think about the overall value, they're very often going to find a better deal locally. You know, think of McGuckin Hardware, for example, where you walk in the door and within a few seconds you can find someone to help you find pretty much whatever you need. And compare that to the experience of walking into a Home Depot down the road in Louisville, where you might wander around for 5 minutes before finding a clerk and take them another 10 minutes to find out what it is you're looking for. Now, what's 15 minutes of your time worth? Is it worth more or less than the 40 cents you might save on the light bulb, or the $2 you might save on that tool that you're buying? It's something where people don't always make that connection between what's their time worth, what's their experience worth. You know, for me, there's a real qualitative difference between walking into McGuckin and walking into Home Depot. It's not just quantitative in terms of time or efficiency. And to me, that's what I want to do with my time here on Earth, is go places that have more of a personal feeling, a connection to the community. And I'm not going to do that where I'm not getting a good value, but very often when you look past the facade, you are going to find the better values locally.
I'm sorry, I want to address that too. I've got an interesting experiment that anybody out there can try. Go into the Boulder bookstore and ask someone at the front desk about some topic that you're interested in, and see if they can recommend any books, and see what you come up with. Go to Borders, try the same thing. Then do the same experiment with going into the video station. Ask the person at the front desk, I'm looking for a drama, whatever, and then try it at Blockbusters. And my guess is that at the locally owned businesses, you're going to find people with much greater care, that have much greater experience in the area. And you can try it with the food co-op when you go there.
So let's...
I wanted to bring up one more point. I don't want people to think that when you go in the co-op, you're not going to be able to find what you need or get around the store.
We'll be smaller.
We realize that marketing is important, and marketing in terms of meeting the customer's needs, basically. And personally, I have 20 years experience in marketing with a large national cooperative, and we have so many resources in our membership, nearly 500 members, that have experience in various aspects of running retail stores and in design and marketing, whatever. So I feel like we are going to concentrate on that. And when somebody goes in the store, it'll be well organized. The signage will be good to help lead people to where they need to find the product they want. And we'll improve as we go along also, as we get more feedback from customers.
And I just wanted to say that we've been focusing a lot on the type of product that the co-op's going to provide, but the co-op is going to provide more than just product. It's going to provide community, and I think that's something that's sorely lacking in this community, is a sense of community. When I go to King Super or Vitamin Cottage, I walk around there. I don't know anybody. I feel like I'm just there to get, my soy milk. And I leave. When I go to the co-op, I'm going to see, hey Theo, how's it going? Hey Steve, it's what's going on? I'm going to know the people that work there. I'm going to know the people that shop there, and I'm going to care about them. It's going to be more than just going to pick up what I need for dinner.
Yeah. One of the neat things in that sense about a food co-op, as opposed to any other kind of community organization that I can think of in Boulder, is that it's going to have a semi-public nature to it. Anybody can come into it. And people will be coming into it daily if we get the location right. Like a lot of people will just continue coming back. And you can spend as much time as you want there. There's no set format. So it's kind of a way of taking the Pearl Street Mall and making it smaller and selling one product that people put a lot of care into, or one kind of product that people put a whole lot of care into. And that can build community in an incredible way. I think that is something very much lacking in Boulder. We have specific kinds of communities that usually you have to pay money to just to get entry into it. You can walk into the co-op and shoplift if you want, or just sit in our chairs and never buy anything, or loiter.
We welcome loitering.
Loiter seems like a safer term. So it seems as if there's been some, though there's some disagreement on how benign or useful or evil corporations are. There seems to be a consensus that the co-op would be great to have. So let's spend some time with Steve and tell us what can we do. Is there a website? Is there? Let's start with that.
To contact the co-op, you can go to www.bouldercoop.com. We have only one page up right now, but we're developing the rest of the site. But you can get all the contact information there. And also you can call 303-447-COOP or 2667. And
We're going to repeat those at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Okay.
about that. So.
Great.
What else can we do in terms of maybe offering money, or if we want to join in some way and offer our skills?
I mean, membership is the first step. You know, if you want to get involved in the co-op, become a member. And there's various levels that you can join at. For a single person, it's $250 for a lifetime membership, or you can pay that in $25 a year until it reaches $250. First year is $50 because there's a joining fee attached. And as a couple or a family, you can join as a family membership, which is $350 lifetime and $35 a year with a $35 first year fee. So there's various levels you can join at, but we definitely need more members. Like I said, we have about 500 now, and we hope to have 1,000 when we open the store. The other thing is helping with our fundraising efforts if you want to get involved more, or loans. We're asking our members to provide some loans, and that's the way most co-ops get started, is members get together and they all pitch in with a certain amount of loan money. And then, I guess those are the main things we need.
So there's a lot of ways through money. Are there ways through labor? I mean, if somebody wanted to say, I'm good at graphic design. Can I give you some kind of an in-kind donation that way? I mean, you interested in any kind of in-kind donations like that, or?
Sure. Yeah, graphic arts helps. If they have experience in setting up a store or designing it, that would help. More marketing experience.
General business skills to join the board, general organizing skills. We're doing a lot of phone calls to potential members, so phone calling with us, which is part of our fundraising effort. All of those things will come in handy.
And once the co-op actually opens, once we have a location, we're going to need muscle power. We're going to need people to sweep, paint, set up shelves, put products on shelves.
And this is coordinated through phone and email right now. Do you have a website that lists all this by any chance?
Soon all the parts of the website will be up.
Okay.
Right now it's one
So
content.
we could go there and find out how can I contribute, and that'll be clear.
Or you can call that phone number again, 303-447-COOP.
Right.
Talk with us about any of these ways to get involved.
Yeah, this is needs to be cooperative effort, basically, to start a co-op. I mean, one person can't do it, 5 people can't do it, but a community can do it, and it can work.
And if we build it, we will come.
Actually, I just wanted to set it up and never shop there.
It's absurd. But when you think of how many people have participated in the process of making this happen, we've almost got, that, 2% of the health food shoppers in Boulder that we need to make this work involved in our project in some minor way already. So really, if you have participated a little or you're interested, then shop there. That's going to really be what's going to make it happen in the long run.
Actually, just realized you should make sure people know how to get in touch with us too at Boulder Independent Business Alliance. And we do have a website also, which is www.boulder-iba.org. And we also welcome phone calls at 303-402-1575. And you can pick these up at about 150 of our member businesses around Boulder County, and have an easy reference for those of you out there who care about supporting the local independent businesses in the community. In addition to the co-op, it's going to be part of a whole self-supporting and really interdependence that I think is going to be key, not only for the co-op, but for all of the independent businesses in the community.
Okay, so for our listeners who want to get their pen or pencil, in about 3 minutes, we're going to go over those phone numbers again for both of those. So I want to begin, just do a little bit of wrap up right here. So we've got a new co-op. It's going to be the Boulder Co-op Market. It may open as early as August, hopefully sometime during this growing season. And you've made a lot of headway in terms of raising your money, but you've got a lot more to go. And so you want us to pitch in and join, and it sounds like it would be rewarding, support local growers, maybe more quality control, part of building community, supporting local business. So there's a lot of political and ethical and emotional, community and aesthetic, a lot of reasons to join this project. And that sounds terrific. So we're going to give everybody a last word in a minute, but first I want to talk about next week's show. So actually, we've got a show every other week, and the show in 2 weeks is going to have to do with the history of violence on the Hill. And we're going to be talking with some students and some local business owners and some residents of the Hill to talk about maybe some of the feelings of frustration or alienation or whatever some of the causes are to this, and hopefully find some solutions. So let's take our Please Come, that's April 16th, and you sign in with us on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. In the meantime, do you want to give us those phone numbers one more time and the website? Can we start with you, Steve?
Okay. Phone number is 303-447-2667. Website is www.bouldercoop.com.
Terrific. And Jeff?
For the Boulder Independent Business Alliance, it's www.boulder-iba.org. The phone number is 303-402-1575, and I'll make my closing thought as being this. And join the co-op, support the effort.
Okay, great. Thank you guys very much, Steve,
Thank you.
Jeff, Theo, and Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks.